This is the What Matters Most podcast. A 100% listener-supported program. And now, here is your host, Paul Samuel Dolman.
Welcome back to What Matters Most, a very special international edition. My guest today came so highly regarded. You should have this person on the show, both Ervin Laszlo, who's been on multiple times, and Pierre Pradevon, who's also been on several times. So shout out to those great elders. She is a visionary, a futurist, and an author. She has got so many great articles on her website, which there's a link on the page. And I'm just excited to have her on the show and to finally welcome her to our beautiful family, Miss Nicolya Christi. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Paul. I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
I wanted to ask you first how you were doing just with the COVID over the last year, and has that affected you in any way?
Just in terms of my work, because it's made me really question the direction of spirituality and, what I guess in what I call the old paradigm, which would, consider a lot of people that are at the forefront with big metaphysical and spiritual messages. They would have ordinarily in the past be considered to be spiritual teachers. But we know that that paradigm is moving away, and we're moving into something else, which is much more about equality and sharing and, the imparting of information in a different way. So I've questioned, everything that's going on with COVID, and of course what's behind COVID, what I perceive to be behind it, and where I've gone with it in my own thoughts. And it's how do I fit that into the spiritual metaphysical framework my work has become renowned for. And it's all part and parcel of it. It's a holistic whole. It's like the shadow and the light, the integration of both. And as I see it, this COVID story it's part of the bigger plan, capital B, capital P. And my feeling is it really is a calling of our times for us to, and this has been a basis of the message of my work since I began this path in terms of specifically writing in 2009. And the foundation of my work is about the wake-up call for humanity, the times we're living in. I'll digress for a moment. There was a phenomenal cosmological event that we're just coming out of the tail end of now, which was called the Grand Alignment Zone. And this is a once in a 26,000 year event. It began it was in 1975, and it completes on December the 21st, 2021. That date is absolutely crucial, and I am deluged with writing. I don't have enough minutes in a day with all the writing, and somehow I need to fit in a big article towards the end of this year. I always write an end of year article that carries over for the year coming in, and this one feels more important than anything other than 2012. When I wrote on the eve of 2012, I wrote about 2012 in quite a big way. That was actually the basis of my book 2012, A Clarion Call, that came out in 2010 that came out. Or was it 2011 anyway? Oh no, 2011 it came out. That's right, I wrote it 2009. And basically this is the next biggest story for me in terms of, and I'm answering your question about COVID, I'm just kind of coming in from a bigger angle, that we entered this process in December 21st, 1975. It completes on December 21st, 2021. And we went into what they call the eye of the needle of this galactic alignment zone from 1980 to 2016. And I've always said that this window of time, this 41-year window of time, and then within that, the 36-year window of time of 1980 to 2016, this has been the time for humanity to accelerate in terms of its conscious evolution, its conscious awakening at an exponential rate. faster than we've ever been able to do before, and perhaps even faster than we'll do again for another 26,000 years. So as we go into next year, which is the final year of that 41-year window, the closing of the galactic alignment zone, the closing of a 26,000 year cycle we've been in as a humanity, as a world, as an earth. Next year is going to be a year, I think, that is going to really rock us. 2020, I can't imagine anybody that's come through this year and not been shaken in some way or other, not just by what's been going on with COVID, but also in their own lives, because it's like the winds of evolution are blowing the strongest possible at this point to push us into 2021 and to wake up fast. So for me, COVID-19, as part of the bigger plan, is perfectly and divinely timed. And it is the wake-up call that humanity is needed, because we've had so many different wake-up calls, and we've kind of like peeked our heads above the covers, and we thought, had a look around, thought, no, I'll put my head back under the covers again. COVID, we can't do that. So this whole COVID question brings up so many questions about what is really going on at the, let's say, the, in quotes, so-called leadership levels, the so-called governance levels at a global level. What's really going on? What agendas are really being rolled in under what I say, under our very masked noses? And so I think we need to be alert. I've just written a big article. I published it about 3 days ago, and it was called, what did I call it now? Oh, the War of Words, the Civil War of Words. What is the calling of our times? What is the big question? And it's united, we stand, divided, we fall. And what I've been noticing on social media is a war, a civil war of words, people polarizing to the extreme, people unfriending each other. If somebody writes something on a Twitter, on an Instagram, on a Facebook, or any of these other social media platforms, they can either gain dozens of followers or lose dozens of followers just by something they've written. So a lot of people are saying, even when they're actually writing in there, just as they're about to introduce some information they want to share, they'll say, look, please, can we all keep an open mind? We don't need to unfriend each other. And yet still, bang, they're unfriended, because people have massively polarized. And what I've written in this article, which I feel is a very important article, is I'm saying this is not what we need to be doing at this time. We need to be taking off the grey tinted spectacles, and we need to be taking a good, long, hard look at what has been global governance for millennia, and where has it got us? As I say in the article, where's the peace we've prayed for all of our lives? Where's the peace that our ancestors prayed for, fought for, suffered for, sacrificed, died for? Where is the legacy of peace we want to leave to future generations? Because for millennia, we've been in this top-down power over governance model, as it were, this system, and it's got us nowhere. And now we find ourselves in 2020 in, I would say, the biggest mess humanity has been in I would say its history, actually, its entire history, because this takes everything we've ever been through to the next level, what's being rolled in. And of course, I don't want to spend best part of our interview, unless that's where you'd like me to go, I don't want to spend best part of it going into that. What I would say to anyone listening to this, if they go to my website, they go to articles and blogs, it's all there, my stance on this situation. So to summarize my response to your question, in the short term, we're in a mess and we need to do something about it, and we need to do it together. In the long term, this is exactly what needed to happen at this time. It's decreed by the planets. It's decreed by the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that happened on the 12th of January this year. Again, a very, very rare alignment. And there was no way that conjunction was going to happen and we were going to have an easy ride this year. Absolutely no way. That conjunction was the catalyst to turn everything on its head, which is where we are right now.
I love that answer. I love the scope of it. And what I was thinking when you so eloquently were speaking is that salvation's like been a mirage for the human race out on the horizon. It never gets to. It's always just out of reach. And when you were speaking about all the division, I saw the borders in the countries, and yet from space, it's all one beautiful planet. And separation, separation, hierarchy, hierarchy, the patriarchy. And it's not like the divine feminine, the divine goddess, and those old, ancient, timeless, sustainable paradigms of unity and collectiveness and 7 generations ahead and living in harmony with everyone and everything, the plants, the bees, the birds. It may sound cliche, but those beautiful, beautiful ways of life lasted forever, and they didn't build nuclear weapons or fight wars. A lot of them were very passive, beautiful people. Did I hear you correctly with what you said? I just think I love what you said. And I have been reading your articles. I love the one you just posted.
Were you asking me what you just shared with me? Is that in summary what I was saying?
Yeah, from my layman's point of view. I know yours is much deeper, but uh, that's what I've been garnering from what you said and also reading from what you wrote before on your pages.
People, and I see in terms of our conscious evolution as a collective, that we have reached a maturational stage, a significant maturational stage, where we're shifting out of adolescence, just from a collective consciousness perspective, because we know that there is no such thing as time from a linear perspective. We know it's very cyclical, and we've just been here a short while, a blink of an eye, in terms of the bigger picture of, in quotes, time, close quotes. And so we have reached this critical maturational stage. I'd say we're probably between the ages of 18 and 21 in terms of our collective conscious evolution. And of course, there are masters, there are elders here who, they have the consciousness and the awakenedness and the awareness of, seers, the elders, and these elders can be in young bodies, as we know. But in terms of looking at the mass, we're looking at sort of a conscious awakening. And I think this vaccine, this whole COVID-19 thing with everything they're trying to roll in about these potentially mandatory vaccinations, which have not been tested, I mean, it's incomprehensible that they want to potentially vaccinate fit and healthy people across the globe, billions of us, and we have to say why. So when we look at that picture and we say, okay, are we going to allow this? This makes no sense. And again, it's in my article, so I don't want to keep you, in this place of just this particular line of inquiry. But there are big, big, big questions, and part of our maturational process, as it would be for an adolescent from 18 to 21, is beginning to take responsibility, self-responsibility, and responsibility for others. That the world doesn't just revolve around us as it does when we're growing up, until we get to 18 to some degree, we're still in that narcissistic, and it's an appropriate narcissistic cycle. But we move out of that from 18 to 21 and we start to grow up. We start to make decisions that we know impact others and impact ourselves. This is part of the maturational process. So the call of our times is saying it's time to mature. It's time to take responsibility, response, ability. We have that capacity to respond. We are able to respond. And again, in the article that you just said that you read, the most recent one I've written, I talk about how we've been conditioned, millennia of conditioning. And of course, we have the epigenetic factor. We have the ancestral factor. We have what's running in our DNA, the stories of our ancestors, of the generations that have gone, that have suffered and suffered and suffered and have felt powerless in a power over system. And that's what we've been living in. But these are different times. These, as I say this, 26,000 year galactic cycle that's coming to a close, that window that opened up for us, has said, listen, humanity, you can step out of this. You're not locked into this. Whatever has happened has been part of the bigger plan. Everything is. But it's time to recognize for ourselves now, okay, it's time to change the story and to make this story, what I've said before, not his story as in history, or her story when there was a time of matriarchal rule, which was not much more positive than the patriarchal rule, but just expressed in a very different way. So it's not his story or her story, but this story in capitals, our story in capitals, a new story for the world. And this is what the call of the times is urging us to do now, but we have to do it together. And I think what so many people, the collective, are used to is getting involved in the drama out there, and as I say in that article, taking sides. And it's a conditioned auto response, in fact reaction. It's a conditioned auto reaction, and we have an opportunity now to say, let's do this differently. Because if we don't do it differently, if we carry on the same trajectory we've been on for millennia, then I can't even begin to imagine where we're headed. But it's not pretty. Let's say it like that.
I completely agree. Nicolya, how does one listening right now put themselves in alignment with this transformation and become part of it and integrate it and embody it and then radiate it outward?
Yeah, yes, I mean, this is a real, again, it's a process of enlightened action. I guess, where we start is we say, okay, we start in the heart. So, even just the physicality of putting our hands into prayer position, putting them in front of the heart chakra and saying everything I look at, everything I read, everything I hear, everything I come to know of, KNOW, I do it with my hands in prayer position in front of my heart, almost bowing to whatever it is, whether it's negative, it's positive, whatever it is, I bow to it because I understand that we are in this evolving cycle of time now. And so if I start in that place, I start from love. We try to stay out of the place of judgment. We try to stay out of what I call, well, not what I call, but I've written about quite extensively, the 7 dark arrows, which I can name, but I would need to get the document up because I won't be able to name them all off by heart because my head's in too many other places at the moment. But the 7 dark arrows, I mean, I'm sure many people here have heard of the ancient oral wisdom teaching of the First Nations people, the 7 dark, 7 light, 7 rainbow arrows. And this is such a profound teaching model. And again, it kind of just gets lost. So this is a model I've included in my pocketbook. 4 fundamentals is one of the 4 fundamentals of the basis of my teachings. And so we know that with the 7 dark arrows, people are so busy firing these indiscriminately at each other and in each other's backs, comparison, judgment, expectation, the wounded child, and so it goes on. So what we do is we start to say, okay, I am going to try and stay in a place of neutrality. I'm going to try to not to polarize. I'm going to try not to judge the, how can I say it, deleterious that's happening at a global governance level. I'm going to try not to judge it. And yet at the same time, I need to become informed. I'm not going to dismiss what I'm reading either as conspiracy or anything like that. I'm going to stay open. So that's where we start. We start with this kind of staying open, staying in neutrality, staying in our hearts, but informing ourselves, because informing is the most important thing we can do right now. We cannot afford to bury our heads in the sand. We cannot afford to put our heads back under the duvet cover and poke our heads out, 10 years later thinking, okay, it's a storm past. We have to take responsibility. We have to be responsible. So we explore what's going on out there. We look at what's going on out there and we say, okay, how can I contribute to the transformation, which is your very question. So we start to dialogue with each other. We have open dialogue. We start to become curious about what we're reading. If we read something, we think the initial reaction, not response, the initial reaction is, oh, that's complete rubbish. We come back and we say, okay, what is it? Let's have a look at this. What exactly is this person saying? And then maybe say, can I have some more information here? Can you help me to understand more? I want to understand. Because informed is empowered. And, I often quote, because I think it's probably the quote, I would say, it is the quote of the times, as far as I'm concerned. And we had Jimi Hendrix come in, and he left his legacy of music, but actually for me, above and beyond that, he left one simple quote, and it's alive now, and that is, when the power of love overcomes, I would use a different word to overcomes, I would say supersedes, transcends. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, then humanity will be free. It's something like that, his quote. And it's so true. We have been living for millennia, we've been courting a power over global governance, whether it's been local governance when we were kind of, in Egyptian times, or, other times where the times of the various indigenous tribes that had great wisdom, but some of them were, pretty, how can we say, dicey. So we've had this power over, and it's been going on and on and on throughout history. And so now we're saying we're in a time of the shift. The shift is shifting from the love of power to the power of love, and creating a new world from that place. And we can only do that if we center ourselves and love ourselves. So if we are coming at each other, we're coming at the world, and we're relating to whatever's going on out there from a polarized place of reaction and anger. And I think anger, righteous anger to some degree, is important, but just as a fuel to conscious action. If we're coming from that place of reaction, we perpetuate the cycle. Nothing is going to change. Yet if we position ourselves in the power of love, and we say, okay, we come from a place of love, we don't want to overpower anything. We want to dissolve the patterns that have happened. And the other thing that is so important is nothing can be done to us as a collective, nothing that we don't allow. And we have, for some reason, and I think it's to do with conditioning, we have just gone along with, in quotes, what we've been told we have to do, close quotes. And in that, we've had no power. And now we're in a place where we can say, no, if that's not what I choose, then that's not what I choose. And if enough of us are doing that, then these, how can we say, these dangerous, I'm trying to use the least inciting words as possible, these dangerous agendas and plans that are out there, they can't happen.
God, yes. And I've always been amazed at how so few can control and frighten and manipulate so many, that you could never have the world you have if people just woke up, that you wouldn't have people starving to death or building nuclear warheads or hoarding medicine or millions of different things that just make absolutely no sense. And yet the benign herd, like you say, maybe it's just our conditioning and the constant stream of misinformation and brainwashing. And also that's what a lot of schooling is. It's just teaching obedience, blind obedience and loyalty, nationalism. Uh, but like you say, if there was this, like when the wall came down, if people just wake up, it crumbles. If the palace guard decides not to attack protesters and just joins them, it's over. You don't have the one despot. Like we're saying. So we are on the cusp of that. It's incredibly thrilling and exciting. I have always felt here that it's this grand, beautiful game, cosmic game, because I know that I'm not just my body, a collection of old stardust and carbon, but yet it's very important that I'm here having these experiences as a soul. And how can I contribute to love while being a bioorganism and still being human and honoring my humanness ways and not burying my head in the sand, like you said, and checking out and just being, hedonist. So I love the way you mix it all together. Would you share a little bit about the experiences you had, if you don't mind, just so people will get a context how you had these out of body experiences and then you actually died? I think it would give people a scope of the beautiful place of which you're coming from.
And I mean, I will say as well, Paul, that I've, for the first time, I mean, this all happened to me from 1997 to 2002, and for the first time, I've actually put the entire story into the book, my next big main book, because I have these pocketbook series that I've started to put out, and I'll mention the next one that's coming out in December later on. But the three big books, my first one, 2012 Clarion Call, which to this day stands the test of time in terms of what it shares, which is pretty much what we're talking about now. But of course, we've gone up to a whole other level of concern in 2020. And then, of course, the second one, Contemporary Spirituality for an Evolving World, which talks about a new kind of spirituality, because my work is very much about moving into the new paradigm, a new conscious epoch, and leaving behind the old. And then the third big book is coming out in autumn of 2021, and it's called Love, God, and Everything. And I think we've got a subtitle which is Navigating the Long Dark Night of Collective Soul. And I'm just considering, the final few words to that, just to bring it into what we're actually navigating into. But so the point of what I'm saying here is I share in detail what happened to me, not just from 1997 to 2002, but all, or pretty much all of them. I remembered some others after I'd written the manuscript, but there's enough in there. All of the out-of-body, metaphysical, higher dimensional experiences I've had. So what happened for me in June of 1997 is, leading up to June 1997, I had started praying about 18 months before, a year before, with absolute in earnest, praying, please, I'm here, to Spirit, please, I'm here. Use my vessel, send me where I need to be. How can I best be of service? I need and I want to be of service in this lifetime. I want to get to the point when I'm taking my last breath, where I know that I made the most of my time here. So I'm here in service. So I prayed from the deepest parts of my being for about 18 months for that. And then in June 1997, I went to the only one I ever went to. I went to a Kundalini yoga class in central London. It was being run by a kind of, in quotes, guru type person, close quotes. And I did this Kundalini yoga class, never been to one before. And there was a point where we all had to lie down flat on our backs and just close our eyes. And I just went into this really deep space. And then suddenly I thought a plane was about to crash into the building. It was shocking. And I sat up thinking, oh my God, what's happening? And because the whole room was just vibrating, it was rumbling, it was like the energy was just off the charts. And I noticed that the facilitator was playing this gong, and it was so loud, it just was going through me, my whole being, in waves and waves and waves. Anyway, I left there, I drove back to where I was staying, and I was in a daze. I'd gone into an altered state, which had never happened before. I don't know how I got back. I went to bed that night, and then I woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I opened my eyes, and there was this really unusual sensation in the room. I'd never felt it before. And the next thing, I heard this sound, and it was like this whooshing sound, and it was like, and it was getting louder and louder, and it was circling my head, and eventually it came in through my left ear. And as soon as it came into my left ear, my body started to convulse. I was completely transfixed. I couldn't move, but my eyes were open, and the next thing, I was out of my body. And this went on for 5 years, and it got to a point where it was happening every week, sometimes every day. It was always at the same time every morning, and I saw things, I was told things, I was shown things, which I share in the book that's coming out next autumn. And anyway, 5 years later, and what was happening every time this happened, it was like 1,000 volts were coursing through my body, because obviously that was keeping my body alive, keeping me in the body while I was out of the body, going all over the place, off planet. And anyway, after 5 years, I had a complete collapse, and my physical understanding of it was probably that my nervous system had fried. But the metaphysical understanding was, of course, way more profound. And that was what happened is I had this collapse, and 2 weeks after collapsing on Easter Sunday 2002, I died. I was on my own. I'd been taken to a friend's. I'd been carried in a car and taken up to a friend's because I was already on the very, very close to death the week before that. And I'd gone to this friend's, and I just felt myself going. And I floated above my body. I looked down at my body and I saw this skeletal me, probably around 86 years of age, skeletal, long platinum hair splayed out behind me, very skeletal. I'd gone. And the next thing, I came back into the body. And I then went through 7 grueling years. And grueling is an understatement of integrating what had come back in, which from my own perspective was my future self. So what had happened up until that point, I'd been deeply, deeply involved in psychotherapy, psychosynthesis and core process psychotherapy, training and practicing as a practitioner. And I'm the kind of person, I'll leave no stone unturned. So I went to the nth degree to, seek every dark corner, every shadowy corner inside of myself and clear it and clean it. And my sense is that I got to that point and it was done. What I'd come here in this lifetime to do had been done because I'd gone at it with such, commitment. And the life that I perhaps would have been living on the next timeline, because I don't really talk about past or future lives now, I talk about timelines, it came in. And so a much larger proportion of my higher self came in with it, with the life force coming back. And it was like, I describe it like trying to fit a quart into a pint pot. Before there'd been this pint version fitting into a pint pot of awareness and awakening within myself. But then this whole other level happened, and it took 7 years. The vibration of it was so intense and so high that physically my body couldn't cope with it. So I was chronically and acutely ill for 7 long years, from 2002, March the 16th, 2002 is when I collapsed. And for 7 years, I was in a physical state, which was, it was catastrophic, to be honest. I never thought I would get my life back. I could never see myself being able to go out for a walk around a house. I was bedbound for 3 months. I was sofa bound for 2 years. I was in a really bad way. And then what happened is, slowly but surely, I started to get some semblance of health back, but still I was very challenged. And I'd said to Spirit, because twice when that happened, in the first year in 2002, I collapsed in the March, and later that month, this whooshing sound, which was always the precursor to an out-of-body experience, it started to spin around my head. I was so ill, I said no. And I tried so hard to stop it. It came in a little bit, but then it went. And then it happened again in November 2002. And I had my first and only ever what I call psychic attack, which I talk about in the book, which was, I didn't believe in them until I had it. And once I had that psychic attack, I knew they existed. And then I said to Spirit, after I came out of that, I said, if you guys want to work with me, because obviously I put that earnest prayer up in 1996, if you want to work with me, you're going to have to find another way, because I will not allow this anymore, because it's destroying my physical health. And so that's it. I was very, very strong with Spirit about that. And I've always had a very strong relationship with Spirit, always since I was a child. So for me, it's like talking to a parent. And if you want to work with me, then we do this in a different way. And so what happened is I had that 7 years of just grueling health. And then 7 years, literally to the day that I collapsed, I was sitting there, and suddenly, out of nowhere, something dropped into my awareness, and it was 2012, a clarion call, a wake-up call for humanity. I thought, what's this? And then I got very clearly, you're going to write a book. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've not even written an article. I haven't a clue how to write a book. It's like, you need to write this book. The next thing, to cut a very long story short, because again, it's all in the book from next year, my hands were over the keyboard, and in 6 weeks, 22-hour clarion call came through me in 6 weeks. It was phenomenal. It was channeled. Pretty much 95% of it was channeled. And that was it. That's how they'd found to work with me. And that's the path I've been on ever since. So there's so many stories that I've missed out there, but they're all in the book, Paul. But that's hopefully that's answered some of your question.
That is incredible. I almost see it as a magnificent thriller, a movie, a trilogy. And I'm wondering, after all that, and I can feel the power and the presence in your words and in you, what's it like now to move through this world with all its beauty and density and everything like that? And you're obviously on a tremendous mission. You're a force. And by the way, I really want to say again, thank you for coming on, because I know you're doing really important work in the world. And the fact that you would agree to come share some of your time with us, which is so precious, means a ton to me. What's this like, though? And I love that you had boundaries too. Otherwise, sometimes the spirit will just destroy the body, because it's not mean. It's just unaware of the need to sleep and eat and do all the things that a bioorganism has to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the things that I've written also for the first time is something that channeled through me again in minutes, and this was in 2006, and it was called New Earth, Future Earth. And somebody said to me, Seer, she said, "You're from the future." And as soon as she said it, I thought, oh my God, now I understand. Now I understand why it's been a difficult path for me in this lifetime, because I have just not recognized what's around me. I find the transport system, I find the entire way this world works, I find it antiquated. And so in New Earth, Future Earth, and actually in some parts of the book as well, I talk about, especially in New Earth, Future Earth, I think I've called it New Earth channeling, I can't remember what I've called it now. I've put everything in there, and it talks about the world that just the other side of the veil. It's so many people are talking about the new earth, new consciousness, new earth, the new human. That new earth channeling is it. So I came to realize it's true. Now I understand why I feel such juxtaposition, if you like, to the world around me. I find it so slow, so dense, the energy so dense, shops, the money, all of these things that form our world, what I call the old paradigm, I just can't resonate with. So, which is why I spend a lot of my time living on top of a mountain, just in my own space with all the writing and the words. So, what's it like to move through the world as it is? Well, it's interesting because I have that, what I call bifocal vision, which actually is a term I learned in psychosynthesis during my training as a psychosynthesis therapist. And bifocal vision is when we see something at the here and now reality level, but we also see the bigger picture of it. And because of this bifocal vision and this understanding of the future earth, really knowing GNO, gnosis, knowing what that is, it kind of gives me this perspective which makes it possible for me to look at everything that's going on and understand it at a much deeper level, and understand where we're going and where we're trying to get to and what is actually there. And there's many what I call scouts from the future who are here, who are sowing the seeds of the future. And yeah, so it's moving through the world with that kind of vision, that bifocal vision, makes things, it really sources the work. And another thing that I spoke about in the book as well, which again is one of the few times I've talked about it, is, and this was probably the most profound experience I had of all, and it was the last one I had, when that energy came into my body, because obviously I'd been very clear, no, you don't come in anymore. But this caught me off guard. I'd been to the south of France for the first time. I'd come to the Rennes-le-Château area. I felt really, really drawn to come here after I'd written Clarion Call. I felt pushed to come to this region. And I came here, and I don't know if any of the listeners have ever been to Rennes-le-Château, but the energy is sublime. It just captivated me, and I thought, I have to live here. I went back. I only came here for about 5 days. I got back. I was living in Pilton, just outside of Glastonbury. And I got back to Pilton. I went to bed that night. It was the night of the 13th of October. I went to bed. I woke up at something like 4 o'clock in the morning, and that energy just was in, bang. I couldn't even stop it. It was in. And as it came in, I came out of my body. And I won't go into the whole story because I've actually talked about it in the book. But to cut a very, very long story short, it culminated in this out of body experience suddenly starting to float up towards this vast cosmic space above me. And at the higher I went, the more I was dropping humanness. And so the mind dropped, the emotions dropped, physicality dropped first, the emotions dropped, the mind dropped, and suddenly I was floating in this space of no mind, no body, no emotions. And that was profound beyond anything I've ever read about, and certainly anything I've ever experienced. And it showed me this is how weighed down we are by the way we express our emotions, by the way we express our minds. Here's where we can go. Can we imagine living in a world where we have transcended the emotions and we're pure feeling? We've transcended the, in quotes, lower mind and all of its, imprisoning behaviorisms, as it were, and we are just higher mind. But I mean, I had gone beyond even that. I'd gone into a pure soul state. And when I came back from that and I woke up and I came out of that, and I mean, of course, I couldn't go back to sleep after that. I thought, my God, I have just had a rare experience of what pure enlightenment feels like while you're still in a human body, and what an incredible experience that is. And it showed me what was possible. So I'm not saying that we're anywhere near that as a collective, because, we're still, as I say, we're still at sort of 18 to 21 year old stage. However, we can rapidly evolve and accelerate. And we can go through actually what I went through in 2002, a sudden death. The collective consciousness could age suddenly, and it could then incarnate its next form, as it were, which could embody that experience I had. So also that just speaks to your question, having had that experience on top of all the out-of-body experiences, on top of the gnosis that I live my life by. I'm fundamentally intuitive. I don't read anyone's work. I don't read other books. I don't read articles, because I try to keep my channel clear. So I have friends, colleagues, they send me this, they send me that, and I say no, because whatever comes through me, I want to know it's pure. And then if I see it, an article titled this, or somebody says, somebody else has written something similar to that, then I think, thankfully, I'm on track, because it's come through a pure channel in myself. So all of these experiences I've had have led me to this understanding of where we are at a humanity from a trajectorial perspective in terms of our conscious evolution.
I see you. You are a time traveler from a future of possibility that is so beautiful. And yeah, we're still using our stone axes and hitting each other in the head with it, but angels like you show up and say, time out. You're not here now, but this is what's possible. Here are some sketches. Here are some paths you might want to take. Of course, you have free will, you have free choice individually and collectively, but there is another higher way if you wish to take it. And it's beautiful. And what you're saying, I have felt these same things. I feel it's primitive here. I've had experiences very similar to what you're talking about. And then you have to move around in this and be patient. And for me, the challenge is always to be not judgmental, like you talked about, but to try to see everything through the eyes of great compassion, love, and forgiveness, while obviously holding healthy boundaries. But just to know that, but for the grace of God go I, and that if I had had the other's path in childhood or whatever karmic, I would be them. So I'm no better than anyone. But is there anything I can bring to the moment? Whoever shows up in front of me, I always have the mantra, love what shows up in front of me. Is there any way I can assist that being on 4 legs, 2 legs, or whatever, to just have a kinder, loving experience in the moment, and perhaps their trajectory could be positively impacted? And I see you doing that on a big scale.
you asked the question earlier if anyone's, wondering how they can sort of, if you like, be part of the transformation or be more part of it anyway, because we're all part of it anyway, even if we don't think we are. It just comes back to that classic Gandhi statement: be the change you wish to see in the world. I mean, again, it's so cliche, but it's so true. Be love. All the time we're being love, we're sowing those seeds. And for me, this whole futuristic energy that I feel connected with is part of the sowing the seeds of the future in the now. And that's all we can do, just stay neutral, stay centered in love, stay non-judgmental, try to stay out of conflict. And of course, we also need to be looking at the conflict within ourselves, because here's another thing. And that is that and I know everybody knows this anyway, but just for the sake of the interview, everything we see in the world is an accurate mirror of the shadow of the collective consciousness. And all of the wounding, all of the pain. In the new book, there's a chapter which it speaks directly to this, called the what did I say? I think it's called the epigenetics of conscious evolution, and it talks about what's registered in our DNA, what our ancestors have been through, what our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and so it goes back, how their experiences and their stories impact our psyche in the here and now. And most of them, their stories were of suffering, of deprivation, of struggle, of hardship, of starvation. So one of the things I wanted to do in the book is I wanted to talk about consumerism. And why does consumerism exist in the first place? Which I don't need to go into right now because it's in the book. But that took me into a very deep understanding of why consumerism exists and what purpose it's serving. But now it's time again to change gear, to change up to the next level. And this is where we are right now. This is what COVID's all about. Now, are we going to empower ourselves and say, no, it's not okay? I'm not going to be mandatorily vaccinated. I'm not going to be put in perpetual lockdown if I don't have a vaccination and have my, human rights taken from me, my rights of freedom and choice, which is the direction it's going in at the moment. And also no to a vaccination that has been rolled out in a manner of months. What are we saying no to? And this leads to something else I'm putting together at the moment. I'm putting this project together, which I'm hoping to launch on spring of 2021. And it speaks directly to what we're saying no to and what we're saying yes to, and how we make that transition and how we do it in a way where we're not polarizing, we're not blaming, naming, shaming. There isn't conflict and violence and anger and rage and outrage. That's all part of trying to free ourselves, because that's never worked. So we have to find a different way if we really want to see change, and we really want to, as the ancient wise prophecies foretold, of moving into the 1,000 years of peace that the Hopi talked of, the new golden age that the classic Maya talked about, and so many other indigenous wise cultures gave these kind of predictions and prophecies to start to unfold in the timeline of humanity now. But it's up to us. Now, if we're ready and we want to embrace a new kind of reality, then we have to find our no. And in finding our no, we say yes to ourselves. In saying yes to ourselves, we say no to another. But we do it in a way that's different to how we've ever done it before, because this, for me, is the only way that's going to work. We can't keep finger pointing. We can't keep polarizing. We can't keep blaming. We can't keep screaming and shouting at each other. You're right, I'm wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. All the either's ors, they don't work. We have to find another way. And that's where my work is centered. That's where the stance I take.
I have been hearing throughout the whole interview, be the change you wish to see. And then you said it. So I'm smiling. It is all connected. And when you were talking about the alignment of all the stars and planets and things like that, I just felt this warm glow in myself that it's this one beautiful, incredible energy system. I'm pointing pointers at it. I mean, with these insignificant phonetics. But I am all there is, and so are you. There is the illusion of separation. And I think if we can break through Maya and work together here, with that as a core paradigm, that if someone else suffers, the collective suffers, the whole organism suffers. There is no other. I feel like we could see an incredible quantum shift.
Absolutely. What I'm sitting with is when we look at parenting versus conscious parenting, when we look at the adolescent years, when the adolescent is beginning to break away from the, let's say, the conditions in quotes of the, what I would call sort of 3D in quotes parenting, it's usually quite violent. It's usually quite rebellious. It's usually quite polarizing. Children running away, children, falling out with their parents, not talking to them for a long time, etc. It's quite a wrench. It's quite violent. Well, when you think about conscious co-parenting and conscious parenting, you're looking at how that stage between 18 and 21 is managed, and in a conscious parenting household, as it were, especially if the children have been raised in that way, but certainly, at that age, you would sit down and you would share how you're feeling, the children, the adolescents with the parents with the adolescents, and together you would navigate, negotiate that process of leaving home. And or leaving the let's say the how can I say the authority, if you like, the authority of the parents, no matter how loving it is in conscious parenting, in order to grow up, to become responsible, to become independent, to come into our eye, the sacral and solar plexus chakra coming into the eye, the sun center. That would all be handled in a very conscious way, and this is what we need to apply to the world. Because if we look at the authority in quotes, okay, if we look at authority from the personality level, the wounded ego level, the 3D level, we're just going to continue trying to wrangle and wrench our way and fight our way out of what's being imposed. The rules and the regulations of the parents. This is my house. If you don't like it, you can leave. That kind of polarizing narrative. Yet if we approach what's going on in the world from a conscious parenting perspective, and okay, the parent in the world, if we look at global governance right now, is not conscious, we know that. But if we can bring consciousness as the, in quotes, adolescents and the 21-year-olds, and we can sit and we can say, okay, listen, we don't want to fight with you. Mom, dad, I don't want to fight with you. I need to leave this regime. Thank you for what you've given this far, but this doesn't work for me anymore. And I want to do this in love. I want us to find a way of doing this where, we're not polarizing, we're not naming, blaming, shaming, finger pointing, and all of this. Then we can begin to bring something new. Because I think all the while we're making global governance bad and we're good, we're missing the point. And we're not going to get the outcome we're looking for. We have to apply emotional intelligence, psychological maturity, and spiritual enlightenment, if you like, to the scenarios we're facing. And I think if we can do that, then we can actually begin to potentially fulfill these ancient prophecies that have said that, this is a time where we have the biggest opportunity in the history of humankind to transform our experience of life on this earth in a human form.
In hearing that, I think if you're listening to this, it's not an accident. And no one is here on this planet at this time by accident. We're here because of all this. This is the big time. And what a privilege to be here during this time of opportunity where we could take a massive leap, or it could go the other way, but at least we have the opportunity.
Exactly. And there's no question, we have tens of thousands of millions of us, I'd almost say even like a couple of billion of us even, have specifically come here, incarnated at this time for this reason. This is why we're here. This is the higher purpose of why we're here.
No, I have to let you go, but I have a sort of a left field question. What do you do for fun? Do you just step away from it all, and what brings you joy?
Well, I would say what brings me joy is living with nature. It's my greatest joy is nature and my relationship with nature. Walking and being in the mountains or being by the sea, playing, dancing, listening to some music that I love, being with friends that I love, these are the things. But yeah, that's kind of what I do in quotes for fun at this point. And that could change. And just also to add here, Paul, that going back to the death experience in 2002, just after that, the 4 consecutive nights after I had the death experience, and I was still pretty much not in body. I was in the process of leaving the week before, and it took about a week to really come back properly into the body. I had 4 prolific, I called them at the time, and I'll just say it for the sake of making it easier to understand, past life recalls from a timeline I lived on before. And they came in sequential stages. So it was almost like watching 4 separate stills from a film from the beginning to the end. And at the time, and it was very intense, the experience. And I remember I never ever wrote them down. I've remembered them 18 years later to this day. I remembered them at the time. I thought to myself, and it was a random thought because, of course, I'd never been anywhere near writing in 2002. I was too ill to even think about it. I thought, I'm sure that I need to write about this one day. And sure enough, 18 years later, I suddenly realized I need to put this into a book. So I am now writing my first novel. It's a fiction based on fact novel. And it's spanning 2 timelines, which are talking exactly about the same thing. And it's World War II. It's 1940 to 1944, which was what was shown to me in those 4 sequential stages, each one of them built into the story and the story built around them. And then it flashes between then and what's actually happening in the world now. So it doesn't sound like fun, but actually that is also fun for me. To be writing in a very, very different way, but so meaningful because it really has a message. And as I say, it's a story for our times. It's a message for our times. And I'm hoping to have that finished by March.
I think all of that sounds fun and wonderful, and that you're experiencing, like me, I love nature and being near the ocean. I'll let you go. I'll ask you one more question. Are you optimistic, if that's even a word that you would use, for what is to come?
Okay, I would say because of the cosmic story that's unfolding in conjunction and actually ahead of all of this, that makes me optimistic. I would like to believe that enough people will wake up to what's going on. And I think COVID is the wake up call for so many people, because a lot of people that would never have even questioned the things that are being questioned now are saying, hold on a minute, something about this isn't right. People that would ordinarily have just been going about their jobs, their days, and not even thinking about the bigger picture of what's going on out there in the world when it comes to global governance. So from the astrological, cosmological perspective, I'm very optimistic. From the people perspective, I'm hopeful. And I'll just say this as my last piece to share with you, because of course, I know you need to get off as well. Something extraordinary is happening on December the 21st of this year. So we have 2 December the 21st, 2 consecutive December 21st that are extraordinary. I've already described the first one, which is the completion of the galactic alignment zone, and the work we really have our work cut out in 2021. We cannot drag our heels in that year. We have to absolutely power through with what we need to do. But this year on December the 21st, and this is something I Googled and I have not found anything about this. After it came to me, I thought somebody has to have written about this. And I Googled and I Googled and I Googled. I could find nothing. I consulted a friend of mine who's a prolific astrologer. And I said, listen, I think I've discovered something here Does this make sense to you? And I'll tell you what it is in a moment. He went back in the ephemerides, which are the planetary tables. He went back as far as 7 BC, and he could see no occurrences of this conjunction. And what it is, it's a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius on the solstice. This is phenomenal. The fact that it's never happened going back to 7 BC is the first astrological event I'm ever aware of in this lifetime where we can't trace it back 100 years ago, 500, 600, 800 years ago, but millennia ago? No. So for me, this not only initiates new beginnings, December 21st, 2020, not only initiates new beginnings and a new era, but for me, it instrumentally positions us at the very gateway of the new age of Aquarius. So many astrologers, I'm not an astrologer, but I genuinely, I feel there are times that the planets talk to me, and there's other times when they're silent. So I only write anything astrological when they speak to me. So I might not write anything astrological for 8 months, a year, and then suddenly, bang, in comes a conversation. So many astrologers have very, very different thoughts about when the new age of Aquarius begins. But for me, this is loud and clear. 0 degrees of Aquarius, all the way back to 7 BC, it's never happened, and no time to go back even further because there's just no time to do it. This is the beginning at 0 degrees of Aquarius. This is so promising. And again, if people go to the articles on my website, I've written about the age of Aquarius. I've written about what that age is about, what it's presenting to us as a humanity, where it's going to take us. This is phenomenal. So my sense is we come in on a completely new era, which begins this December, 21st December 2020. Then we have this grand cycle, this 26,000 year grand cycle closing on December the 21st, 2021. And let's even look at those figures. It's the same as the 21st of December 2012. It's just the figures are the other way around, 2021 rather than 2012. So it's very significant. And then I would say going into 2022, I need to look at the astrology for that and get a sense of where that's taking us. But we're on a new path at that point. So my final words are to anyone that's listening, hold on to the sides in 2021. You know, we can say to ourselves on New Year's Eve this year, oh God, let's hope this next year is better than the last. And wonderful. Let's pray for that. However, don't be surprised if we're going to be moving on that tidal wave at such a speed, and trust whatever needs to happen in that year will unfold, will happen. And when we get to the end of the closing of that cycle, we come into 2022, my sense is we're on new ground. It's not to say that everything that's going on is not going to continue, but somehow, some way, enough of us have arrived at a place where we can start to bring in instrumental change that is needed.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you. Will you come back on again? I just think I have a million more questions, but I don't want to keep you too long. Everything you say leads in my mind and heart to 10 more inquiries. So opening. It's just so opening.
I would love to come on, and I would specifically also love to come on when the book comes out, because then you'll see the book. And my publisher, I have to say, they're very excited about it, and they've said it's the best thing I've ever written. And I know there's something special in that book, and I'm going to really look forward to being able to talk to people about it.
When is the release date? December?
I don't have the exact release date. It's the autumn-winter catalogue, and it should be, I think, probably around October, November 2021.
Oh, good. Well, we'll definitely have you back then, and if maybe before.
Not before, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing incredible work. It's an honor to present you to my worldwide audience and to interact with you and just to hear these beautiful truths and possibilities firsthand. It's just a transcendent experience.
All you're doing Beautiful, beautiful job as well with bringing what you bring to people and talking to the people you talk with and facilitating what you facilitate. So yeah, we're all in this together. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the What Matters Most podcast, a 100% listener-supported program. If you feel inspired, please go to our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/whatmattersmost and join our family. So until the next time, stay inspired and in the light.